general, they gave 3s across the board. And when I pushed them on this, I got the sense that they viewed their job as complete when they had run the scan, produced the report, and handed it off to the development team. And so they weren't necessarily factoring in that whole concept of fixing the vulnerabilities. And so I think that's why these were weighted a little bit more highly than the other ones we saw. I wasn't surprised to see the development expertise as a 3 because, again, running a penetration test, you don't need knowledge of the code. You're just going to point the tool at the URL and fire away. And if you're not really factoring in fixing the vulnerabilities, then you could, I think it kind of leads you to put 3s on both of these. Accuracy, so false positives, false negatives, pretty standard here. I think they had reasonable expectations and they were met. The one note they said on the false negatives front, the reason they didn't give it a 3 was, again, they mentioned coverage, which was just they got the sense that the penetration testing tool didn't cover the entire application. To Jacob's point about the online booking system for the airline, it didn't hit that page that would come up when you made the reservation for the last seat. And again, as I said, for technology support across the board, we saw 2s, and I think this was just kind of, met all their technology requirements, and so they kind of gave it a 2. So when you sum the numbers, pretty high numbers here, 21 and 21. Optimization was a lot better than expected. Human resources was a little worse, and setup was a little worse. Okay, case study number 3. So this is a company that deployed an application firewall, online brokerage firm, smaller company, $1 billion in revenue, but they had 12,000 production servers. And the person we were talking to was the Chief Information Security Officer again. Okay, here we go, one last time. So setup and optimization, 2s across the board. And in talking to them, they had pretty good expectations. They basically said, we knew when we were going to deploy an application firewall that we were going to go through a process often called learning mode with an application firewall, take some time to set it up, to configure it, to train it. And they had reasonable expectations and it met those expectations. In terms of performance, this was one thing they called out as a big negative for them. They expected to see some hit on performance, but they saw more than they expected. But I should note on this one, this is a company that has a lot of traffic coming to their site, and their business is 100% online. So any hit to performance actually had a very big effect on them. So when they saw that hit on performance, they were very upset, and hence the number 1. It's okay, go ahead. I don't know what they saw. No.
Could they just spend the money and scale outward, like you said, the upward scaling is more dollars? Is that how they addressed it?
Yeah, so they didn't quite realize how many application firewalls, how many boxes were actually needed to handle the amount of traffic they had. So they started out with a fairly small investment and saw a huge hit towards their performance, and then started adding more and more. It improved it, but it still was, they still were unhappy with the level of performance. Yeah.
Do you know if this was in any way, shape, or form related to SSL encryption, decryption, duplication?
It was, yes. Human resources. So this was one area that they were upset with as well. And so remember, it's not pertaining to the setup and getting it up and running, but the management of it. And when I pushed on what he meant here, he said, well, we update our application a fair amount. And every time we make an update, we have to go back and go through another learning mode and kind of train the application firewall. It wasn't always a lot of time. It wasn't as much time as when you first did it, but it was always this additional step we had to do whenever we changed the application, and that got to be fairly tedious and time-consuming. Okay, expertise required, development and security. Again, not much of a surprise. They got 2s across the board. They were fortunate because one thing they said is they realized the importance of having a person who knew a fair amount about security as well as a fair amount about the actual application itself. And they said, we realized that you needed that one person who could bridge those two areas in kind of setting up and maintaining this application firewall. They had that sort of person, so they said we were okay. But if they hadn't had that, they said it might, this number might be slightly different for them. False positives and false negatives. So slightly worse than expected. Still, in the end, they gave them both a 2. Not a bad score. It's just I think they had lofty expectations of that they would be very, very accurate and have very low false positives and false negatives. Again, in terms of technology support across the board, everyone said 2-2.
Do you have any discussion with them about why they picked the particular one that they picked? Do they think that maybe they picked the wrong one?
They did a bake-off of a few different ones. And they didn't say why they picked this one. I think they thought it was the market leader.
I mean the type, not necessarily.
Oh, you mean application firewall versus penetration testing or source code analysis?
Right.
I think they viewed it as a quick, easy solution.
I think it's important to notice that the type of organization that you presented the cases for example, the first organization that chose the source code analysis was primarily a development organization. You saw that they had over 2,000 developers. For them, it made more sense to actually address the problem within the source code because they had the expertise, development expertise. Whereas the second organization went with penetration testing, and it seems like because they had a smaller development organization. And the third organization seemed like had no development expertise per se. They primarily were hosting organization. So they didn't necessarily could afford. It wasn't the best solution for them to actually do penetration testing. They wanted a solution that actually remediated the problem that rather than fixing the source because they possibly had no control over the source code.
You want to say something?
If you don't mind.
No.
I think that's a really good point. One thing I would say about the third case is that they, in terms of the percentage of their revenue that's driven through online applications, they are developing those applications themselves. It's just that that represents a smaller portion of their overall revenue. So I would say not so much that they're not, that they don't have in-house development expertise, but that they are less ready to deploy resources, apply resources to the development organization as opposed to something they can apply externally at the network layer that doesn't involve that group.
My point was that it said you can see substantially the difference, the substantial difference between the first organization, their development resources, second and third. And I think that's definitely come to play in making a decision what type of method you're going to choose.
Yeah, and I mean, to be completely honest, part of the point of this whole presentation is just that: is to see these criteria and think about your own organization and do this evaluation for yourself and see which solution makes sense for you.
And from an organization perspective, I don't think it's either one or this one. I think a large organization, such as, let's say, your computer manufacturing case study, from their perspective, I think the benefits would be not only doing a source code, but also obviously doing a variety of methods.
I completely agree, and I'll spoil one takeaway on my final slide, which is actually all 3 of these companies today are doing more than one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Are they comparing them and telling you which they prefer or where they get better bang for the buck?
That's next year's presentation. Oh, okay. We're at it. We're out of time. Maybe can we just meet up afterwards and I'll answer your question? I just want about 3 more slides. I'll crank through really quickly. Okay, so last one on this one. Not to say application firewalls were bad. 16 is a very respectable score. Just the expectations weren't quite met. So quick review on the 3 case studies. So one, all 3 solutions required more effort than was expected. None of them got a 3 in setup. None of them got a 3 in human resources. All of them produced reasonably accurate results. Nobody got a 1 in false positives or false negatives. I'm going to skip a couple here for the sake of time. Performance was an issue mainly with the application firewall, but again, that site had a lot of traffic and it was core to their business revenue, so it was that much more important.